I know I noticed you recorded another previous to the on either Mighty Warrior Army of God. You recorded Graham Kendrick's song For This Purpose, and
Yeah,
uh, that's another one that I remember. It just seems like the late '80s. He was very prolific, and a lot of his songs were being absorbed. Bob Fitts did a handful of his songs. Heaven is in my heart, As We Pray. Join Our Hearts, pardon me. It just seemed like a lot of his songs were
mm.
making their way into the Integrity stable.
I'm gonna guess here, but I'm guessing Garrett Gustafson had a lot to do with getting his songs on there. They were very much two peas in a pod. They were very similar kind of people. Garrett probably would gravitate to a lot of his songs, a little bit more historical, theological content, more
Yeah,
broad, broad appeal. Uh, Garrett was always cognizant of those kind of things.
I love that. Well, I know some of the integrity artists were involved in teaching at conferences and speaking at different engagements. You mentioned you have participated in some of that. What are your memories of those opportunities and really being able to meet and engage with people from the North American church who really were probably many of them learning, because you think of the people that would have been listening to those projects, especially if they were in their 20s, 30s, 40s, chances are they grew up in a church that didn't have this modern worship exposure. So I'm just curious, would you hear stories of people that are learning to worship in an expressive way, maybe even for the first time, as you engaged with them at conferences and at engagements?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you had a lot of that. Back in those days, there weren't as many seminars and workshops, and individual churches didn't have as developed of bands and programs that
Yeah.
doing this kind of music. So whenever there was a good seminar or workshop, it was packed. So I was involved in, they called it a Worship International. It was the sort of nonprofit branch of Integrity, and they did these conferences. And I did a number of them. I'd be on the building with Ron Canoli, Alvin Slaughter, and Lenny LeBlanc, and Paul Balash, and all this. Would there be like two or three worship leaders, and then some other people that just did workshops teaching everything from playing drums and bass and arranging, all every kind of breakout workshop you can have. And I did some of that. I'm not a real big teacher in terms of, that's not really my gifting. I would tend to do how to rehearse a band and how to put songs together, like your questions you're asking me. But I didn't do real in-depth teachings. But I was with them and would do a few classes, and I would lead worship. Yeah, so those are
That's
great.
great.
Went all over the country doing that.
Who are some of the people at Integrity within the company, staff or artists, that made a lasting impression on you, and how did they accomplish that?
Well, certainly Garrett would be up there number one, because at a time in my life, kind of a time where I needed who he was in my life. There's encouragement and a validator and just a good friend. There's also, as a husband and wife, Mike and Pat Reed. They went on the road and sold product at festivals and stuff that I was at a lot. So they'd have the Integrity music booth. And we hung out. They were great people. He did other things at the company. I just don't remember what it was, but that's what I remember him specifically doing. Uh, my interactions with Mike Coleman and Ed Lindquist in the early days was great. Uh, very very much a family kind of situation there. And there were names that nobody would know, just people that I knew, secretaries. And there was a guy that played drums in a little church we had in Mobile while I was living there. And I think his job in Integrity, he had to listen through his quality control. He had to listen through before they released the tracks, make sure there were no ticks and pops and mistakes and all that kind of stuff. So you can imagine just constantly listening through every project with headphones all day long. His name was Brad Steele. Uh, those are the ones that come to mind. Again, in the very beginning, Integrity was very small and it was kind of a family. As it started growing, after probably between Worship the King and Be Magnified, I kind of lost real close connection. I moved away from Mobile, and I wasn't as interacting with everybody as much. And uh, actually, Garrett Gustafson and I started a little company called Wholehearted Worship. We started doing projects and products to help smaller churches. I got kind of focused on that.
Are there any other worship leaders from the Integrity Hosanna music series stable that you remember? Man, they were a fun hang, or they were, anytime we were chilling at conferences or whatnot,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
enjoyed being around them.
yeah. I mentioned Charlie and Jill LeBlanc. Uh, Charlie did the record, but they were a duo. Went live. It was his husband and wife, and Billy Funk,
Yeah.
and he's crazy. He kind of always reminded us of the dad on the TV show The Dinosaurs. Remember
Oh
that?
yeah. Not the mama. Yeah.
Yeah. He's just kind of a big guy with the jolly. But anyway, he was fun. Lenny LeBlanc, when we did one of these records I was telling you about, Wholehearted Worship, we did it at Lenny's studio and stayed at his house. He was a lot of fun. And uh, Paul Balash in the early days, uh, when I hung around him, he was fun. A lot of people were really fun.
That's
Alvin Slaughter, I remember doing those conferences with him, and afterwards late night, we'd go back to the hotel. He'd want to go to Cracker Barrel and get a big chicken fried steak. He was a
so
fun guy.
cool. Did you ever have any interaction or connect with like Bob Fitz or Don Moen?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Bob. Not so much. I mean, uh, I wasn't as close to Don as a close friend. I mean, it was a working relationship, but
Sure.
Bob Fitz, yeah, he was great, and we invited him to do something with the Wholehearted Worship, so I spent more time with him then. Uh, but yeah, just he's exactly like he sounds on the record. He's just easygoing, nice guy, soft spoken, just uh, tender heart.
Yeah, because when I
Uh,
think of like kind of the guys in Integrity that are ushering in that acoustic guitar
yeah,
vibe, I think of you, I think of Bob, I think of
yeah,
Paul,
yeah.
all just kind of, guitar playing worship leaders, which really changed the spectrum from the keyboard led stuff that we had
Mm.
heard in much of the 80s.
And if you notice the Be Magnified, when it came out, I think it was the first record that had distortion guitar up in the mix and leads and stuff. It was the rockinest record at the time.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Very,
so
very, very aggressive. Randy, I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, what are some of the challenges of leading worship and managing a platform of influence that may be larger than typical local church and a worship leader at a typical small church? Like, what are some of the challenges of just managing that and finding yourself in these positions where, wow, this is a bigger group than
mhm,
than my local church back home?
right. Yeah, you definitely have to kind of shift your communication approach and skills, I guess, to effectively communicate to larger groups. Maybe be a little bit more larger than life, a little bit more animated, a little bit more um, out there, but also at the same time, just uh, not seem separated, not seem aloof.
Mm,
Be able to talk to people, meet people, and uh, relate to them.
yeah.
Um, but I didn't find it all that different. For me, like I said, I was surprised when they asked me to do it, and when I got a part of that, and I was uh, had that platform of influence. What it opened up for me was that people knew my name and would contact me and say, "Hey, can you come to our church or this conference or something?" So I kind of went from just a very localized kind of ministry specific to what I was doing to more people knew who you were. They
Mm.
didn't really know who you were. They knew what albums you had done and what they liked. And in fact, I mentioned Kingdom Bound, that festival. Have you
Yeah.
heard of that? You've heard of that?
I've been
Yeah.
there, and I'm
Okay.
sure I was there probably when you were. I was going to that multiple years in the '90s, and I'm sure that
Oh
we met at
wow.
the same time.
Do you remember it's called the Worship Tent? It was over on the
Yep,
island.
absolutely. That's where I first met Paul Balash.
Well, I'm the guy that kind of started that because initially, this quick rabbit trail. Initially, there was a guy that ran Kingdom Bound. It's a great big guy named Fred Caserta. He'd get on the phone and he'd bark out the orders, and he ran the thing. But he called it down to Mobile and said, "Hey," he's that kind of New York accent. He said, "Hey, I want these integrity singers come down here and do this festival." They said, "Well, they're not any real group. It's just put together for albums." "Well, I want somebody to come down." So I got the call. Hey, there's a guy who wants somebody to come lead worship at an amusement park. Are you open to that? I was like, and first thing popped in my head was me going down a roller coaster, going, "Praise God!" Yes, lead worship at a amusement park. I said yes. I said yes to pretty much everything. Let's do it. And I got connected doing that. But I got up there and I felt somewhat of responsibility. I'm representing Integrity Music, and they wanted me to lead worship. They had just a little tent. It was more like a tent, like I'm overheated. I need to get out of the sun, go
Hmm.
sit on these picnic tables under a tent and have some prayer time. And maybe we'll lead a little worship over there. That was kind of like what it was. And they did have me do it on the main stage too at night, but during the day they wanted me to do this little prayer tent. And I said, if you make it more of a big deal, more people will want to come. We need to maybe have some chairs set up and maybe a screen back when we were projecting the words on a
Yeah.
projector. I said, at
Overhead.
least you got to give them something to see so they can participate, and maybe a PA, and act like it's a bigger deal and they'll want to come. So the very first year it was kind of small. The second year it grew. Third year, pretty soon they were throwing money in it and making that area a bigger stage, a bigger PA, everything. And now what it's become now. But in the beginning, I wasn't single-handedly responsible, but I was the one who kind of got it going. So anyway.
That's awesome. My memory from going there was they always had like really good deals on like the older Integrity records. They had a CD table.
Dollar bin.
You could buy like really the early stuff for like $5 a CD, and it's just like sure, then it exposed you to that at a reasonable budget, back in
Yeah,
the
yeah.
day. Randy, what would you say are the most important characteristics worship leaders should possess to have a long-lasting, effective ministry?
Hmm. Uh, I'd say, be true to who you are. Stay, you know, stay humble and keep yourself in context of what's going on. You're not as big a deal as you often think. Maybe look at yourself in the big picture, see what God is using you to do, but don't get carried away with it. Uh, Stay in that servant butler role. Realize that that's kind of what we do. That's what all ministry is, really. But and if you get some level of notoriety and success, just keep it in context. Remember where you came from. Remember who helped you along the way, and um, just keep that in mind. That's what I'd say.
Well, in 1993, you recorded your final project with Integrity and perhaps your best known album, Be Magnified. I know many will recognize that title track. What are your memories of everything leading up to this recording, the night that it was recorded, the song list, and really what God did through that project?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's my favorite project. I think it's more me than some of the others, or at least where I was at that time. Everything has its season, but but it was a great night. Although I remember it was by the time it was all said and done and mixed, it was a great project. But there were some issues, problems we had a little bit there in the live night, but they
Yeah,
got
what
repaired.
happened?
Just little mechanical. I mean, there was one song. That one song, "We Praise You, Jesus." It's
Yeah.
just everything. The band drops out. It's just guitar, boom, chang, 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 and my cord got pulled out, and so there was no guitar coming live
Ah.
at all. And I was like, oh, had to put the cord in. That's an amateur mistake, but somehow it got pulled out. And just little things. And it first of all, that was the first album I'd ever done live, because all the others were studio. So here I was live. Now I'm playing my guitar live. It's Abraham Laborio, Bill Maxwell, Tom Brooks, Lenny Kelly, and Leanne back there, and Danny Bridgens on guitar from South Africa. It's this great band, and I was a little more nervous than normal. I was just a little bit more hyper self-conscious, and so though you can't tell it on the record now that it's done, but the first half,
Yeah.
uh, was a little more stilted that night. By the time we came back, they take a break, they changed the reels, and we came back and started with "How Great Is Your Goodness," "Lord, I Thirst for You," or whatever the songs were in order. But anyway, that whole side, that was almost like a separate night to me. That's
Mm.
where it really took off. I was more kind of settled, and it was powerful. And the whole I will seek a place at your altar. Lord,
Mm.
I thirst for you, more love, be magnified,
Yeah.
stand up for Jesus. That all is very powerful flow. The first song, "Great Is Your Goodness," is almost like an introduction song to the other side, and sort of almost like a standalone song. And then
Yeah.
it's the rest of it is just one continual worship flow, and the crowd was really there. It was a great night,
Where
for
was it
sure.
recorded, Randy?
That was one of those where this is. I'll keep it short, I promise. This is another segue from Kingdom Bound. Uh, this was the one record, the one recording I actually asked if I could do another one. I was at a little meeting where Garrett and Don Moen and several people were out, and we were reviewing something. I was just on the panel and took a break from that. And I went up to Don and I said, "Hey, I got this idea. I've been doing these festivals, and I've been doing this one in particular, Kingdom Bound, and there's like 40,000 people there at night. And what about if we recorded uh, something in front of 40,000 people, talking about the crowd and the energy and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah." And that was my idea. And I said, "I'd love to do another record. I got some song ideas." And they were like, "Oh, that's a good idea." And so we were kind of pursuing that up to, I think, just maybe 2.5 months before the recording, which was going to be in September. And then logistically, it just wasn't going to work. We'd have to have the whole stage for the whole day set up, and you can't do that at a festival. You got all these contracts, these bands coming in. It wasn't going to work. It was a great idea, but it wasn't going to work. So they said, "You got a church in mind, any place you've been that you'd like to record it?" And I had just recently been to this church in Jacksonville, Florida called New Life. And my friend Steve Bowersox was the worship director there at the time. And when he would travel with Integrity and he would do all these workshops, sometimes he'd be gone for the weekend and he would ask different Integrity friends to come and sub lead worship for him. So I've done it a few times. And it was a great church, big, but not too separated from, you're close to the people. And they had good facility, good PA. And I thought, let's do it there. And so that's where it was.
That's great.
Yeah.
And you mentioned like an all-star band, Kelly Willard singing on Be
Yeah.
Magnified. Like just that must have, you're talking about your exposure to Jesus movement music back in the day. That must have just been really incredible to have her singing on the project. And
It was. I mean, I used to listen to all those, "Blame it on the one I love.
yeah,
If you don't have a willing heart, ask God to give you one."
yeah,
All this stuff. And in fact, on Mighty Warrior, when we did a duet, we weren't in the same room. She phoned hers in from California, where she's living there at the time, and I came in St. Louis and sang with her. But I couldn't believe I was singing with Kelly Willard, somebody I really admired and liked,
wow,
their music. So yeah, she was there, and of course, I knew Leanne and Carl
yep,
from the first day I was involved with Integrity, and Lenny as well.
that's great. That's great. How were the songs chosen, Randy? Do you remember the
Um,
meetings leading up to that?
yeah, I brought a lot of those songs. So Sanctuary was a song. I don't know where I first heard it, but it was just a song that we were doing, and I thought it was a great song. Again, one of those short songs that you got to use some arranging techniques to make it interesting.
Yeah,
And Tom did a great job. And I remember I was saying to Tom, nowadays I really don't start out of the gate with a big bang. He goes, "Yeah, why don't you just stand up and talk? You pick in your guitar and talk to the crowd." And he just said, "That's a great idea. That's you. Run with it." And I
yeah.
don't think anybody had ever opened a record like that in Integrity
Mhm.
before. So slow and kind of a slow boil. So we did that. But I brought a lot of those songs. Uh, the song Apostles' Creed, I had heard
Yeah.
that somebody out of Nashville had written that. I didn't know the guy, I didn't meet him. I'd heard it, and I thought, what a powerful song. I brought that. That was a great song.
In a
Uh,
gospel, just that holy is he,
yeah,
just that
yeah,
gospel choir feel.
yeah. Oh, yeah. And
Great.
that again, that was Steve Bowersox leading that choir, and he does a great job. But and then the old CCM song from Farrell and Farrell, Bob
Yeah.
and Jane Farrell. He reigns Reigns, Jesus reigns. I always just liked that song. It had that in do 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 do
Yeah,
do
yeah.
do 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 do.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, and then
Boom,
what's funny
boom.
was when I listened to "Be Magnified" now, I go, this was like Tom Brooks had just taken a syncopation pill or something because everything is just it's just all this. It's very kinetic and um, it's fun. But I brought a lot of those songs, and the rest of them were just probably the guys that choose songs filled it in. But Garrett's song, "A Place at Your Altar," Gary Sadler's "Lord, I Thirst for You," I loved that song, and I think I'm the one who said, let's do "More Love, More Power," which is a Maranatha song. Uh,
Vineyard song.
Vineyard song, okay,
Yeah.
and then Linda Shazo's "Be Magnified." That's a great song. In fact, Don Moen was wanting to record that. I go, oh no, I need to do that. I want to do that song. It particularly meant something to me, especially the second verse. I've
Mm,
leaned on the wisdom of men. Oh Lord, forgive me. And I've responded to them. I used to throw in an ad lib too many times
yeah.
because in the ministry I'd been a part of, it was kind of a controlling, like, they're in your business on every aspect. And I felt like that was ringing true to me. I've responded to them instead of your love and mercy, forgive
Mm,
me.
mm,
But now I see my wrong, heal my heart and give me a song and be magnified.
yeah.
And I knew Lynn knew what I was feeling because we were both in the same ministry. And I got it. I said, I got to do that too.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that comes across in the recording, the connection there. But and then "Stand Up for Jesus." I had been with Garrett doing a workshop up in Manassas, Virginia, and there was a worship leader in there named Jeff Ling, and he did this rendition of "Stand Up for Jesus."
Mm,
Uh, somewhat simpler version than Tom, but basically that ching a ding a ching a ching a ching a ching ching, you know. And I thought I always loved hymns. Growing up in the Methodist Church, I remember singing that. Certain things resonate with you as a sort of anchor points, and I thought that's a great tune. So Tom did a great job of putting that all together. But let's see what else was on there that I brought. Sanctuary. The other song, "Let the Heavens Rejoice," that was Marty Nystrom song. I hadn't heard that before. I think he brought
right.
that. Uh, "I Belong to a Mighty God" was lit.
Another Linda Shaza song,
Yeah.
who is just kind of like an unsung hero of the
Hmm.
stable of songwriters. Praise Him, I Belong to a Mighty God, Be in
Yeah.
Your Name, Ancient Words, um, uh, just so many, Be Magnified, so many great, More Precious than Silver, so many great songs.
What I think she does really, really well is find a really memorable, interesting, simple melody and put the right words with it. I mean, her
Yeah.
songs are all singable. You hear them and you immediately can jump in and you know where they're going. Intrinsically, you know where they're going and can sing along with confidence. Nobody wants to just fully sing into a song if you're not sure where it's going to jump to, and you're hanging out on this note and they go down to this note. And
Yeah. Yeah.
but if a song just feels like a friend, you want to join in. And she wrote some of the best ones like that. And she went on to do her own thing, record her own albums and everything like that. But yeah, in the beginning, I was happy to get a lot of her songs a broader platform. So
That's wonderful. You also mentioned Gary Sadler. I don't know too much about him. Tell me about your friendship with him.
yeah, he's a very quiet guy, and I haven't seen him in later years. But back when I first moved to Mobile in 1991, and Garrett was living there, and of course Integrity's there. I moved there to sort of base out of there as I was traveling, and
Hmm.
we'd started a new little church there called New Song, and I was kind of leading worship when I was in town, and Gary came. He was a friend of Jamie Harville's from way back, I think, and they came to write some songs and connect with Garrett and Integrity, and uh, I met him there, and just a really nice guy, really fun guy.
Mm,
He's the guy actually that sort of introduced me in a big. I mean, I had here and there a song, but he really introduced me in a broad way to Stuart Town and Stoneleigh Band and all the UK stuff
yeah,
way early on. He's the guy
interesting.
that I got that from. Uh, which are great songs, of course.
Yeah,
But
we were exposed.
Gary likes to stay in the shadows. He's not out there that much. I don't know what he's doing now, but
Yeah. You mentioned the Stonely Band. Definitely remember my parents having those worship record CDs,
mm-hmm,
in the 90s from their conferences, their Bible
mm-hmm,
conferences that they would have in Paul Oakley, Stuart Townend,
mm-hmm,
all those names, just again,
yeah.
a big part of the modern worship movement. Let's do this. Let's listen to a few songs from Be Magnified. This is one that I remember. Just open the album, just a chorus that I think maybe was around before you recorded it, but
Oh
this is
yeah, oh yeah.
opening track. This is Sanctuary.
Lord, prepare me. To be a sanctuary, pure and holy, tried and true, with thanksgiving. I'll be a living sanctuary for
You're talking about
you.
singable melodies. Like
Hmm.
it's so intrinsic. Like you can hear that once and you can sing it back. Do
Hmm.
you know who composed that?
I don't really remember. And it was one of those songs that was just kind of wafting around in the circles I was in, and we heard it. And of course, it was so short. You had to put it with something else. But
Yeah.
it was and so I think that was. Of course, I knew how to do modulations, but the whole thing that Tom did, letting it grow and get big, was just a great way to do it. Not too long. I think I actually I did it one more time. It was supposed to end, and I was like, "With Thanksgiving, Lord." I just had to do it one more time, but I was milking it. It was really working for me
Well,
that
it's a
night.
great opener too. It's a great prayer to say as you're
Yeah,
starting off a worship set. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary. I love
it's one of those songs too that I think it has verses, but to me, I don't remember how they went. But to me, it took it in another. It's kind of like, okay, well, now we disconnect and listen to somebody sing the verse, and then we come back. And so it didn't work for a worship song for me. So it
Yeah,
just
there's
didn't
a
work.
number of choruses like that. Linda Shazo has verses to "More Precious Than Silver," and most people don't know them. Not that
Yeah.
they're bad, but it's just, this is the very different world of worship that existed prior to the world that we live in, where
Mhm.
you'd have songs composer unknown. I don't know where this came from, or I just have a piece of it, and then, oh, this is, Don Moen tells the story behind "Give Thanks," and that they had to track down the guy that wrote "Give Thanks," and for years didn't know who had composed it,
Mhm.
and then just kind of showed up. The other thing I recognized with this record, this was just when they were just starting to put people's actual pictures on the front cover,
Yeah.
and there you are sporting what has to be the best mustache and best mullet that I've ever seen a worship leader sport. That was just incredible, man.
I used to get a lot of ribbing about that. I said, it's gonna come back.
I love
But
it.
my hair was really long at one time, and actually permed the back of it.
Yeah.
And that picture that was on Be Magnified was actually taken during the Worship the King recording in
Oh,
1990.
really?
Yeah,
Okay.
and because they had somebody taking pictures for that. I think it was just the face of it was on the spine or something like that. I thought, well, that's a pretty good picture. I don't have a better picture. I didn't take a lot of headshot and pictures of
Sure.
me, but I was like, so I thought, let's use that one. And at the time I had the white guitar.
Yeah. Yeah, I
I think
love
I,
it.
I think I saw that on remember the Judds, Naomi and
Yes.
Winona Judd. They had an album, and one of them had a white guitar. I thought that's striking. I got that little Yamaha APX.
Great.
Later on, I got a Martin. The guitar that's on Be Magnified is a Martin D41. I still have it hanging in my room.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, we mentioned the song earlier. This was the song that your guitar got unplugged at the beginning. But this is for those who want to reference. This is from Be Magnified. This is "We Praise You, Jesus."
We praise you, Jesus. We praise you, Lord. We sing songs of freedom
just great musicianship, great
Yeah,
playing
yeah,
on that
yeah.
project.
And that's much more guitar, rocky guitar than previous records. In fact, they had the, Ron Canoli and some of the others had sort of R&B,
Yeah.
but nobody was doing like more bluesy, distorted licks and stuff.
Yeah, let's talk about that because we've mentioned it a few times, but did you notice at the time that there was this shift that was happening going towards more acoustic worship, more so than piano bass stuff, and what do you think contributed to this shift?
Uh, it wasn't, I don't necessarily conscious. I think Tom just sort of put things together to fit with what the person did. And if you led with guitar, then it kind of songs that, and arrangements went that way. But um, yeah, I guess I don't know. A lot of us played guitar, and it was easy to carry around, and I don't know, just the songs that were being written, maybe they were written by people on guitar. I don't know
Yeah,
how it happened, but you're right. So by the time you got to me and Paul Balash and other people that's what they did. I mean, they were very strummy uh, kind of worship leaders, which was a big part of how they got the song across. You
yeah,
know, they
yeah,
went to
expressing
that,
that way.
went to
Yeah.
that. And
Here's
I was always a guitar player in my mind, way before I was a singer. I just thought I
mm,
sang well enough to maybe get the song across, but I didn't think of myself as a singer. But I really played, and you hear it a little bit more in Be Magnified. But I was always a more of a finger style James Taylor kind of player.
yeah. Yeah, I love it. No, the playing on that record, anybody listening to this right now, like, say what you will about production sounds, it is what it is for 1993, but it's good. The musicianship on that record is good. It's fantastic. Here's we were talking about Linda Shazo. This is one of her songs. This is I Belong to a Mighty God off the same project, Be Magnified.
I belong to the Lord of hosts. I'll stand in him and will not fall. I am justified by the good gift of the Lord. And I will testify that I belong to the Lord of hosts. I belong to the Lord of hosts. I am justified by the good gift of the Lord. I will testify that I belong to the Lord of all. I belong to the Lord of all.
So this is kind of ushering in that kind of, I hear the mandolin guitar in the background, and it has that kind of Appalachian kind of
Hmm.
groove, and that's the first thing I noticed. The other thing I noticed is just like, man, that stellar vocal blend, your voice with Lenny's and Kelly Willard's
Yeah.
hands
Well,
on it. It
to
just
me, that's one of my favorite groupings, trio. They blend so well together. Of course, Lenny and all of them could just look at each other and just flip the harmonies and change it.
yeah,
If they just shuck and jive, as they're singing. They're
so
not reading
good.
any kind of part or anything, just singing. So
It's so good, so good. Did you use a lot of the songs from Be Magnified throughout your music ministry and when you led worship?
I
Are there
did when
some that kind of rose to the top?
I did in the beginning. Of course, when you're a worship leader at church, you're constantly consuming lots of songs. Everybody always wants something new. You're moving on, but there were staples I would go back to. Sanctuary. I still love More Love, More Power. I don't know what it is about that song. It's a guitar player's worship song, and it says
Yeah,
something beautiful and powerful, but very simply. Uh, uh, some of the other songs sometimes can sound dated. Of course,
sure,
you could rearrange them, but
sure,
uh,
sure.
and then some of those songs not every church band could pull off. If you're going to do like the Apostles' Creed, first of all, I'm not sure I could
Oh,
even sing that high anymore, but not every guitar player can play that. Not every drummer, not every it's involved. So
it is. And but as I've listened to the project, that is a song that I still, even in its complexity, I feel it could still stand up. And
hmm
if you realized it with instrumentation with today's effects, and
hmm
like someone could take the bones of that arrangement and I
hmm
think realize with a great choir, like a really like that could be man, because that thing sings.
yeah, I think so too. In fact, it's not like a new idea. I'm sure everybody's thought of, but I really think somebody could take a lot of old integrity songs that kind of rose to the top in terms of everybody singing them in their churches, and reimagine them in today's instrumentation and arrangement. They can still be powerful. I think that's true.
Yeah, we've talked about how cool would it be to like even pair some of the current worship artists with some of the originals like you and do a fresh arrangement even together. Like that would just be a really
Mm,
neat realization of some of because they have a deep catalog and the
yeah,
songs,
yeah.
some of those songs are just timeless.
Hmm.
Um, any other memories? You mentioned some stuff didn't go as smoothly as you would have hoped for on the front end of Be Magnified. Any other memories of that night in terms of what God was doing in the room or just moments from that recording that are memorable to you for whatever reason?
Well, like I said, I remember the back half of it being more powerful than the front,
Yeah,
and because of the issues I mentioned earlier about the front end of it, I was, and this is like the death knell for a worship leader. I was in my head. I was too self-conscious.
sure.
I was trying to, as the guitar player in me was trying to. I wasn't thinking about you can redo this. You can. I was thinking about I wanted to play well with these musicians. I wanted to do good, and I was very self-conscious the first part of it, and so I wasn't noticing what was happening in the crowd.
Mm.
The second half of it, I was more in tune and more relaxed and all that. Uh, but it's like little things like your guitar messes up, someone dropped their music, the electric guitar player, he switched sounds, and the second one was way louder, and it feedback, and it just throws people's attention. So it wasn't all settled yet. It still was powerful. Some people might not have noticed it, but it got there by the second half. uh, and I think I was a little bit nervous and or starstruck at just who I was playing with, and this is fun. Everybody thinks I probably did all these things live, but they were all in the studio, the previous ones, and so here I was, and just got little overwhelmed at first, but then it settled in, and the whole project I think is. And I listen to it now, like you put headphones on, listen top to bottom as an evening and as a worship flow. It's my favorite of
Yeah.
the ones I did. So.
No doubt. Were there any other integrity records that you listened to that you're like, man, I really like this project that so and so did?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when I was traveling, I had access because of my relationship with integrity. I had access to any of the tracks because I would travel. I would play my guitar live, and I had a little mini disc recorder, and I had all the tracks on a little mini disc player. So
Yeah.
I would have a band, but I would do some stuff just guitar, and as it needed to get bigger, I would punch on these tracks. And so I didn't just do my stuff at all. I did stuff off Bob Fitts. This is the day that the Lord has made. And I do Paul Baloche stuff. I do some Ron Canoli stuff. I did the big songs that resonated with me. I had access to any other tracks. So the mini disc, you can put them all on there, and you keep switching the order and moving it around. And I did that for years. Uh, uh, yeah, the Lenny's stuff. I remember Lenny had that song, Lord Make Me Pure in Heart. It had like about a
Mm.
minute and a half percussion intro or something. I love that. It's just then it comes in ching 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 ching, playing the guitar, and I love that. They did a lot of songs, just whatever fit. I had access to all of them. So in fact,
So
I
good.
got tired of mine. I did other people's.
It's so great. I love it. I love it. It just,
Yeah,
again reinforces that whole family
yeah.
community thing, that vibe that you guys had. Well, I would be amiss not to play the title track off of the Be Magnified project because that's a song that I'm sure you became largely associated with, just because you recorded the definitive version. And we were talking earlier of just how great of a song this is, written by Linda Shea. So this is Be Magnified.
I have leaned on the wisdom of men, oh Lord, forgive me, and I have responded to them instead of your light and your mercy. But now, oh Lord, and show yourself strong. And in my eyes and with my soul, oh Lord, be magnified. Oh Lord, be magnified. Sing it together. Be magnified, oh Lord. You are highly exalted, and there is nothing you can't do. Oh Lord, my eyes are on you. Be magnified. Oh Lord, be magnified. Stand and sing it. Be magnified.
I always found interesting that little cue, let's stand and sing it. Were they learning this song when you were recording it and sitting down in the moment? Do you remember?
They were sitting down because more love, more power. And then it transitioned. I think, people, they get tired and it gets hot because you can't have the air on when you're recording. So a number of people, some people, they're just up the whole time, but a lot of people sat down. So it's like you feel it sort of lifting, and you say, "Come on!" Well, really, what I'm saying is, let's all stand
Yeah.
without pointing anybody out. Let's all stand. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just
Great.
you can feel it lift. You can really hear Kelly's harmony in there.
Oh
So
yeah.
distinctive, so distinctive.
Yeah. She has a way of shining through, and your vocal performance on it just sounds wonderful. I
Well,
love
I noticed there when I'm listening, you can hear the emotion in my voice. I go a little sharp on a note, and they didn't fix it because it seems raw and
yeah, it's real. It's honest. I love that lyric, and with my eyes and with my song, oh Lord, be magnified. Like
yeah,
just a great, fantastic
yeah, it is. She's
man.
good at.
Well, Randy, your body of work for integrity in the short span of 7 years quickly established you as a favorite in the Hosanna music series. I know Integrity released a compilation of your output with them. Would you have enjoyed recording more projects with them? Was there a story or a reason behind, why it only lasted as long as it did?
I think it just grew and moved on. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, I did 4. Who could ask for more? I mean, I would love to have done more, but uh, when they did the compilation, basically they just took songs off the other 4. I was a little disappointed they didn't at least record a new track or two
right.
uh, on that, but I was happy they did one with Marty, they did one with Kent, they did one with me and Don. I think that was it. And they said that's not working, and they took it away. But by that time, I had segued into helping Garrett Gustafson. We were doing wholehearted worship projects. We did a series, Praise and Worship for Small Groups, volume 1, 2, 3, 4. We did wholehearted hymns, volume 1 and 2. And these were making songs simple but still good and accessible for
Yeah,
people. Then we did kind of a thing like the Reader's Digest has the best articles of books out there. They had
right.
the worship digest, which is kind of like a wow or something. It was like taking the best songs that are kind of around that people may not know that are under the radar and putting them on a recording. So I was focused on that for like 92, 3, 4, all the way to 2001.
Hmm.
And so I had something else I was doing, but yeah, I would love to have continued with them. But a lot of the people that I knew from Integrity had moved on, and
Sure.
it was changing. The company was growing. They were
Yeah.
expanding to other things, and I'd had my time. Hey, get out of the way, let somebody else do it. 4 or 5 records is all you need.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I think it was just so foundational for the company. And as I look back on some of the people that I was looking up to and cutting my teeth on as a young worship leader, you're one of them. So
oh, thank you.
it's been a great pleasure just to kind of go down memory lane and
Yeah,
to celebrate the story of how God used you, Randy,
yeah,
to influence and to shape this little season in the modern
yeah.
movement. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun. You asked some great questions. Stir some memories.